Nicola from Kali Yoga Studio. Welcome to another episode of Yoga Stories, and I'm talking today with Stephen. First of all, thanks very much, Stephen, for taking time today.
You're welcome. Good to be here.
Before you came here in Canada, different careers that also led to some physical challenges that might have brought you to yoga. Maybe you can just give us a bit of a preview of your life and what led you at the end to yoga.
Well, I'm Stephen Faulkner. I'm a retired family doctor, born and raised in New Zealand, and lived there 27 years before coming to Canada, in northern Saskatchewan for 2 years, and then coming to beautiful Vancouver Island, which is very much like New Zealand. And I was busy in medical practice right from the time I arrived in this country. And at age 35, I went into a severe depression, and I had to reinvent myself in a way which included my body. I was very much in my head, and I had left the body part out of and as well as my spirituality. So I went on a journey to rediscover myself, and part of that discovery was yoga.
Oh, I had no idea that goes back so far.
Yeah, so I started doing yoga in my late 30s, early 40s.
If you think back a little bit, what made you decide to get just up that path? What made you choose yoga in particular? Where were you? What happened at that time?
I was in Cowichan Valley.
You were already here, yeah?
Yes, and my wife at the time, she was doing some yoga and said, why don't you try doing some yoga? And so that's where it started. But I wasn't particularly drawn to yoga. It was a bit of an effort for me, and I couldn't keep my mind very still, and I wanted to just get up and start doing something else. So it was off and on, and then more so I spent 15 years of my career counselling men, because I put myself through a whole system of bioenergetics, and I realized that I had a degree in denial, a degree in being in my head, and it was only through body movement and shaking and dancing and vocalizing that I could get out of my head.
Interesting, yeah.
10 or 12 years of university. It's all about being in your head.
Of course, but it's interesting that you discovered that so strongly, you know.
Yeah, it was an epiphany for me.
Many people go all their life with that.
Well, what I saw with the men was that they were completely in their head too. And so I would start doing some bioenergetics and a little bit of yoga with them. And I was appalled at what they couldn't do, which I just sort of took for granted, like doing a downward dog for men who, especially when they started on this path later in life, at age 50, it just was almost impossible.
Yeah.
So I realized, well, I'm glad I started when I did, and don't stop. And so I encouraged other men to do yoga, including yoga. Later on, I took up tango, and as I've got more and more into my body, I realized when I'm too much in my head. Well, I'll go there very easily and stay there, but then I realized, no, I've got to stay in my body. And when I'm working on my land and doing things, yoga gives me a lot more flexibility. I can do more around my land and my little excavator, my toys. A lot of men who haven't done any kind of yoga, by the time they're 60, it's pretty bad.
Yeah. It does help. You mentioned dance tango, which I think is also such an amazing way to, as you say, to get in your body and certainly combine it with the music. That adds another component,
Yes.
obviously.
Oh, very much so. Yeah.
Rhythm and music and feeling that.
Yeah.
You said that you chose that path very specifically at a specific point of the time with a particular task or goal in mind. How or exactly what part of yoga do you think, or in what way did yoga help in that regard?
Well, at age 53, I was diagnosed with leukemia, which forced me out of active medical practice. And I was, the first 5 years of sort of early retirement, I was an anxious wreck. I was not used to working. And and soon after that, I met Mariana, who was very keen on yoga. And so I went along to more yoga. I got much more into it and found it really good to help reduce my anxiety. And learn to do different poses and even explore more about my physical body. And it's been, well, I've been coming to your yoga classes for, I don't know,
for quite some time
15
now,
years.
Probably,
Yeah. And so I have really appreciated that. I've gone to other yoga classes too, but I find that your classes are more interactive, and a lot of classes are just going through a routine, and your mind can split off and go off into the distance, and you can spend the whole hour on another planet.
That is of course something that really is dear to me, and because I feel that certainly as I grow older, it's not, yes, the physical aspect is certainly, it's important and it's good, the stretches and the strength, but how do I keep that mind from wandering? Where do I, because that is for me the much more profound or more impactful effect of yoga, where the mind goes and what aspect, what exactly is it that keeps my mind here, and how quickly do I realize that the mind wanders off?
And what I like with your technique is keep coming back to the body.
Yeah.
And that's what I was doing with the men too. Not to be, if you can't do a certain move, don't worry about performance anxiety. It's not about that. No one really cares whether you can do it or not. It's for you yourself to be interested in, can you do that? And if you can't, why not? And could you work on that? So I do yoga at home. I'll put myself through a range of movements, just a basic little, takes about 15, 20 minutes. And I can sort of get some feedback from my body saying, yeah, well, you need to get back. You're getting a bit stiff there or sore there, or you can't do this or that.
I found it really interesting that you mentioned, you put it in those words, because what I hear a little bit, what jumps to my mind is that maybe it's not that particular pose that is so important, but exactly the path towards it, the work and the focus we put into it, the struggle sometimes to get there, the struggle physically, the struggle mentally, not to get frustrated at your own body, oh damn it, I still cannot do that, and to work with that path. What happens, and really ask yourself, mentally, emotionally, physically, what happens while I try to achieve that particular pose?
Well, as the aging process goes on, I'm 68, probably 69 soon, and I'm realizing that the aging body is, it's really important to listen to it and follow it. If I want to be mobile and active, as the years go by, I have to be more and more conscious. feeling quite well and you can do all the things that you want, then you may not realize just what you're losing.
Yeah, you do.
And now I'm very aware of what I'm losing.
But isn't that a lovely aspect of growing older, to gain
Yes.
that
Yeah,
awareness?
yeah. Oh, yes. It makes aging less scary.
Yeah.
Less, don't need to be cranky about it.
Mm. And more interesting.
Yeah.
Because, it's definitely not just about what I lose physically, abilities, but what I gain, and that insightfulness and presence and understanding is certainly something that we gain as we grow older.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're mind, body, and spirit. And you can, when you're in your body doing exercises, you do go into your mind, but into your spirit too, and you realize, well, what is my life about? I'm not a machine. I'm not a human doing. I'm a human being, and so that's yoga can be like a little bit of church. I would always say to men, or when I'm conducting some kind of a circle, I would say take some breaths and get at home inside your mobile church. Because our body, it is a church. Yeah. Get comfortable in there.
Are you a religious person?
I'm an SBNR.
A what?
SBNR. Spiritual but not religious.
Oh, I see. Thank you for explaining that.
I had to talk about that a lot long ago. And, that's the little box that you tick when you go into the hospital. Other religion. And there should be a box SBNR.
I like that. Did you come up with that? Or?
Actually, it's been out there for a while, but I would say 70% of Canadians are SBNRs. Yeah. And more as the population ages. So this is your time to do some spirituality, some housekeeping. Go inside yourself and check on your body, your mind. What do you believe? What are you thinking? I'm going to do a bumper sticker which says, "Don't believe everything you think." So true. Yeah. And you feel yoga is helping? Is one tool in that quest? Yeah. How so exactly? Well, also I go with Mariana, and she'll often encourage me to come, and I'll think, oh, no, I could do something else, and so we go together, and then it calms me down, and we're sort of more back in sync after being at yoga. And she likes that, I like that, and we've done the partner yoga. Yeah. Good for your sex life if you do some partner yoga. It's always something to consider. Yeah. Something to share with your partner. To connect on different levels. Yeah. And then it's good for your tango. And you and I have talked about this, doing yango, which is start off with yoga and then go to tango. I like that. Oh, we should create a class about that. I like that. Yes. You should. Because now you're sort of more relaxed in your body, and then you put on some music. And Mariana and I did some dancing at a restaurant. There was live music, and we got up. I said, "Is it okay to dance?" "Yes, please." And the musicians who'd been most of the night with their eyes closed playing suddenly came alive, eyes open. They were so happy that we were dancing. That's awesome. And everybody in the restaurant was happy. Yeah. They clapped, and it was just one little dance. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's I find that you mentioned the partner yoga, because I certainly remember when my partner Gordon and I did the partner yoga, the acrobatic yoga. We often did truly see it as a partnership counseling session, a therapeutic session, because it was so obvious how the physical intimacy and connection you need to be able to support you that way. Yes. Reflect so clearly where you
you're at emotionally, mentally, in your relationship. And if there are things that haven't been discussed out in the open, then you will not be able to balance the other person.
You see where people's boundaries are, yes. And it's the same with tango. You get to know people's energy, you just dance for 10 or 12 minutes, 3 dances with your partner, then you change partner. And at the end of the night, at the Malonga, you will have danced with maybe 10 or 12 partners. And you get to know the energy, your own energy, and how people react to your energy. But another thing we could talk about is dementia, how the aging, I think yoga is really good as an anti-dementia.
Interesting,
device, technique, yeah.
Why do you think so?
Well, it gets you back in your body. Because I think you can overthink. You can spend too much time in your left brain, which is the analytical, rational, logical part of the brain. But really, the more important is the right hemisphere in here, which is the intuitive, artistic, holistic side. And we don't do enough of that, especially men.
Yeah.
And then men are born with and women are born with a corpus callosum, which communicates the two hemispheres of talking to each other. But in men, it's quite undeveloped.
I guess there's still, a little bit less so nowadays, but our generation are still brought up young with the idea that men are, the values and virtues of men is to be rational, to take care of things, to provide. Those are all...
Big boys don't cry,
yeah.
Men are machines, and just go to work. And it's got to stop. The most dangerous thing on the planet right now is the uninitiated male psyche.
Yeah.
We have a man boy south of us in another country who's just offering that as a model for young men, and it's not good.
Yeah.
Not good.
They hopefully are touching in this generation a little bit more that issue and helping the younger ones around. Hopefully, we'll see where that leads us.
I know, sometimes it seems like overwhelming.
Yeah.
Our society the way it is today, but we have to keep trying and doing our best.
Yeah, exactly.
And who knows, somebody in 100 years may be watching this and say, oh, they did think about those things in those days.
Or they will say, how silly were they? They had no idea. It's possible. Yeah. One thing I always kind of wanted to ask you, but I never got around. Knowing, you talk a lot about energies and the spiritual and all that obviously is very important, and you have worked with that, or at least, thought about that a lot. As a person trained in Western medicine, how did you kind of connect those two very different ways of seeing health and life and well-being?
That was part of my midlife crisis at 35. I had always intuitively been a soul doctor, but at age 35, I couldn't play the game, walking on one foot on either world, and I realized how unbalanced I was. So that was the start of my transition in medicine, and I went from being a rational, scientific doctor, the left side, to the right side, and then put the two together. And so I always felt that people came to me for advice, and it was a medical reason, which was an excuse to come and sit down with me. And I'd always end my visits, consultations with patients. Would you like to hear the other side of this?
You were able to do that?
Oh, yes. My patients all knew me. And I'd say, do you want to hear the metaphysical side? Yes, please. That's mostly why they came. They didn't really, you can go on Google now and get the medical, scientific story, but it's the metaphysical part of it. So why is your back hurting? Why is your shoulder hurting? Is it your left shoulder or your right shoulder? If you're right-handed and your right shoulder's bothered, maybe you're attacking something too much. If it's your left side, maybe you're defending from something. Defense and attack. And the thyroid, the heart disease, all the body is talking to us.
I'm just surprised that you were able to include that in your medical profession, because I know that, you know, even legally there is so much bureaucracy. You're not allowed to touch. You're not allowed to say that.
I know. That's the crisis. That maybe my own illness with leukemia was that in the end I couldn't protect myself from that anymore. I had to get out, and I've often thought about the metaphor of my illness. But some people need their illness. The worst thing you can do, teaching medical students, I say sometimes the worst thing you can do is cure somebody. They don't take their illness away from them. But everybody needs to know the story that they're telling themselves about their illness, about their medical problem. You can tell so much from the story. So I became a storyteller. I saw it as counseling, as psychotherapy. I wasn't into fixing anyone. I would say 70% of my prescriptions got thrown away. Yeah. I had one man came to me afterwards, years later, and said, "Yeah, you told me," and I didn't remember him, "that I should hug a tree." And I said, "Yeah, that sounds like me." And a young woman came up to me the other day, she's a young mother, 40 now, with 2 children. She said, and I hadn't seen her for 20 years, 25 years, she said, "I just wanted to say how grateful I was to you when you told me to read Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola essays 30 years ago." And she said, "I was about 16 then, and I didn't understand, but I bought that book, and I knew one day I would read it, and it changed my life."
Wow, that is beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is beautiful. So is this partly that dilemma why you left your medical profession?
I tried to do administration, but I wasn't into that. I realized I was more use outside of medicine and talking to people who wanted to talk like this. Not everyone does.
And you still do a lot that
yes, yeah, I do.
Work,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I do a lot with First Nations and men's circles, men's groups, because I still believe that it's raising men's consciousness that has to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we see a little bit more men in yoga now. That is, yeah,
that's
I'm very glad about that. Slowly it's coming to the idea that yoga is only for middle age.
No, start early, get onto it before the body it sort of gets set in its ways.
Have you ever, you mentioned a lot the spiritual and the energetics. Have you gotten a little bit more in the yoga philosophy, the Vedanta philosophy?
I've explored all philosophies, and I'm a generalist, master of none, and I've sort of, as William Blake would say, I must create a system or be enslaved by another man's. I will not reason and compare. My business is to create. And so I create systems, and everybody is unique and they can create their own system. I don't have the truth. You have to figure out your own truth. Yeah. That's what I try and do. But no, I'm not into any particular philosophy. I've read them all, and they've all got they're all important. They're all ways to the center.
I actually personally found that I remember very clearly my first yoga teacher training, where the first time I was exposed to the philosophy of oneness, where I suddenly was such an eye-opener. Oh my God, this is what my religion actually wanted to say.
Yes.
I'm grown up in Austria, a very Catholic country, and as a young person, not understanding, these very dogmatic things, how they say things, and I didn't make any sense. And it was only through explanations from the Vedanta philosophy that I actually recognized where the similarities are. Oh, they must have meant that. And it makes so much more sense now.
Mm-hmm.
It actually brought me back to my more
Yes,
Christian roots.
yes. That's. I think we all go around that circle and come back to the beginning, only to find yourself there waiting.
It was certainly a lot of interesting things we touched there. As a last question, maybe if you were still practicing a family physician, would you suggest more yoga in people?
Definitely, yes, I'd say. And I did. In my practice, I would say, have you tried yoga? And I'd suggest to the men to do yoga. So maybe some of them have gone and did do yoga. But definitely find out, especially the musculoskeletal system is really where we somatize, and we learned about this in medical school, somatization, which is the tendency to turn an illness or make a story around a sore joint or a muscle or something, and then that would be the problem. When actually, no, that's not the problem. The problem is that you haven't grieved for an injury that you had, or there's some anger around that, and that's the problem. And your body's just giving you a clue, which I would say to the men, if you are getting headaches, it's in your head. If you're grieving a lot, it's in your chest. If you're angry, it's in your shoulders. If you're afraid, it's in your stomach. And some men, I would say, when did you throw up last? Oh, when I was 5, 10, 30, 40 years ago. And so sometimes there needs to be some release in parts of the body that just it's never been expressed.
Wouldn't that be a different health system if we would recognize those aspects in prevention and healing and include that?
Yes. Well, you're doing yoga instructing for teenagers at the high school.
Yeah.
And so it's I think the young people are catching on in some way. I hope
so too.
Yeah.
Thank you so much,
Yes,
Stephen.
you're welcome.
It was really very, very interesting, very enlightening. Wish we could talk much more.
Right,
we might will.
You knew a lot of that anyway.
Yeah, but still a few of those details that I have not heard before.
Right.
Thanks very much for taking the time.
Okay, well, you're welcome. Keep up the good work you do.
And you the same. And thank you very much for listening to this episode of Yoga Stories. There are more to come yet, so please keep on looking, and we will join in hopefully soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.